this week's going to be a little different. This is about the competitors, the driven competitors. So if you're here for our regular entertaining podcast, this one may not be the best one for you, but this will be very relevant to all our competitors for the Driven 2023 tour.
Welcome to Driven Show Coast to Coast Car Talk, where we discuss the latest in automotive trends and the scene.
Of course, for those competitors and those people attending the events, other than seeing my ugly face at the shows, I'm sure you're probably used to seeing Mike's face at the show as well. He's our ops manager and head judge, right? So happy to have you join us, Mike.
All right, thanks.
Of all people, Mike is the guy that probably feels the brunt of my poor organization skills. But he's still around, and I'm really grateful for that. And today, as mentioned, is really about the competitors for Driven in 2023. This is, I think, a podcast. We probably owe people, right, Mike? Like, we've had you on once, maybe, I don't know, maybe a couple years ago, right?
Yeah, once
a little bit about judging. Yeah. But this one will be a little more administrative. By now, you've all the competitors and the public is aware that we've announced a lot of our shows. There's still more shows to be announced. It's a very compressed schedule, so we figure we'd get the first 7 in front of you first. So really excited to return back to many of the cities that we went in 2022, and I think there's going to be some more surprises in the fall. So it's going to be very busy. Yeah. And poor Mike, I've again talking about poor Mike, right? Won't see his kids for a while.
It's going to be a busy summer,
Yeah. What's it like, doing the traveling circus that we do, Mike? Do you hate it, or you've grown to like it a bit?
I've grown to like it. It's fast paced, and fly in, do the show, fly out, but it's a good group, and I enjoy it.
Yeah, no, and I think there's a stretch there. We have a lot of partners that travel with us for every one of the shows. And if you've been actually looking at our schedule, there's a stretch there where we do 4 Drivens back to back, right? In 2022, I think Mike and I and Costas, we basically stayed out east because we're out from the west, right? And Costas is out from Victoria, another one of our friendly faces. And then Mike and I, we basically lived out of a hotel between Halifax and Toronto. This year we're not. We're actually going to fly back. Gosh, we'll do some behind the scenes stuff for people so they can kind of see what happens. But we don't spend a lot of time in these cities when we travel, do we?
No, we don't. And I mean, doing the behind the scenes thing might be a interesting thing for the viewers to kind of see. I mean, like I said, we fly in typically the night before, and then we're up at 5:30, 6 in the morning, getting breakfast and heading to the venue, and we really don't get back to the hotel till probably after midnight in most cases, and then we're up at 5 or 6 again to go to the airport. It's fast.
Yeah, we typically like to take the first flight out and get back home. And I think especially with the very aggressive schedule we have this year, it kind of makes sense that we need to get back. And it's really like, I think there's days where I've flown back in the morning with you, Mike. We get back into town at whatever it may be, like 10 in the morning, and in that afternoon we're having meetings about floor plans for the next event, right?
Yeah.
So there really is no downtime. Sorry, this podcast is really specific towards our competitors here. And by now you've seen that, to kick off our registration, because the number one question we get from our competitors right now is, when will registration open? And the only thing really holding up registration is, a bit of travel for our team and just getting everybody available. And we're there now. To kick it off, we're going to run a Driven Virtual. So for those who aren't familiar with Driven Virtual, we developed an app which the public uses, at our events. And I think virtual kind of came, right? We couldn't run our events, so we kind of retooled our app, our companion app at the shows. And what this app was originally developed to do was when you were at the events, you could literally download this app on your phone, and you could judge like a judge, right? And every time you judge, you are entered in to win some great prizes. And a lot of people want some really great prizes from judging at our events, and we appreciated it. And of course, the competitors really like it because you're getting the public's. It's almost like a people's choice, right, Mike?
Yeah, that's kind of what we see it as, right?
Yeah, and I don't think a lot of people know this, but the public app, excuse me, the public app is really just a shortened form or a simplified version of our judging app, which Mike and I put together. So other than the actual categories, and we'll talk about judging as part of this as well, I'm sure people are dying to hear some of our ins and outs of judging, but the judging that you're doing through the app, it's the same data, the same information that our judges see, and other than the categories, and it's obviously way more robust for our own internal judges, but really it gives you a glimpse into what the judges do that day, right, Mike?
Yep. Yeah, it's almost like a light version, but it does have the same info, the same pictures. Ours is a little bit more, well, a lot more detailed, focusing on the different categories, but yeah, it's pretty much the same.
Yeah. So what I want to do, and again, this is not our typical type of podcast, and I apologize for those listening in on the audio side of things, but I'm going to try to describe things, and I think just for those who do watch our video podcast, it's certainly nice to kind of get an actual view of what that app looks like. So I'm just going to be sharing my screen here. And first off, for the competitors, all the competitors that have entered in 2022, you're automatically entered into the Driven Virtual. Okay. There's going to be an email that's going to be sent out. In that email, you'll have your number that you're listed in the app. There's close to 3,000 competitors that we've had in 2022. So you're in there. You may be listed multiple times, because if you did multiple events, you might be listed multiple times. We're trying to get rid of the duplicates. If we do find that we missed a couple, because mostly because you've either put in a different name or a different email, we might have missed some of the duplicates. But if you do find a duplicate entry for yourself because you attended, say, Edmonton and Calgary, just let us know. We can remove your duplicate. Otherwise, you might end up missing half your votes, right? Or splitting it over 2 vehicles. So based on that number, it's super simple. And the judging is open to everybody, not just the competitors. So what you need to do is go to app.drivenshow.ca. And there's a login screen. Now, I'm using this on the PC. You're seeing everything on same as what you would see on your actual phone. So if you have a Google account, which is what I do, I'm just going to log in with my Google information. And the first thing you hit, now we're looking at Montreal data here, but by the time this podcast rolls out, we should have the actual competitor data from 2022. So all competitors, regardless of which city you competed at, you're listed in this event, this Driven Virtual competition. So the mechanics are very simple. You click the Judge Cards button, and all this information is listed on the homepage as well. And all the cards will be listed. So let's just pick on Dominic here. Dominic, of course, is from Montreal, and you may know him. He's the fast and furious guy from Montreal. So if you want to judge this car, all you have to do is click this Judge This Car. And then in here, there's a drop down. And it's just like your airport washroom. right? When you're rating your airport washrooms, right? You click whether you love it, you like it, it's not bad, it's not your cup of tea, or it's just awful. Now, each one of these has a point attached to it. You can actually submit negative points if you pick not my cup of tea or just awful. So even if you don't want to vote for all 3,000 cars, but if you find a car that you really feel like you need to say that it's awful, feel free to do that, right? We don't make the judging points public. Basically all this information is tabulated in a spreadsheet, very similar to what our judges do when they do judging. And at the end, we have our winner. So for in this case, I'm going to say I love it. And you're not done there. This is the number one mistake we see from all the people that use the app. You have to press submit. If you don't press the submit button, it won't record the score. So that's it. And you get this nice check mark that says sent. Now, there's also some other information here. If you really want to, you can actually leave comments on this vehicle as well. So you can add a comment here and say, and you can post it and they'll see it. So bad spelling, but you know what I mean. So this basically is information that the public will see, but at the end of the day, it's super simple. You can judge as many cars as you want. Each time you judge, you're entered to win a prize, and we have some nice prizes. We have some shirts, some driven shirts, some swag from our sponsors as well. And it's if you want to vote for all 3,000 cars, you can do so. You have a whole weekend to do that. Some other things, just some pro tips for everybody, and they're again listed on the main page here. You can search for cars. So if you're in here, if you want to just search for, I don't know, you want to search for 86, right? You want to see all the, well, that's number 86. Let's look for, I don't know, BMWs. Here's all the BMWs. If you're a real big BMW fan, just type it in there and you can see some of the BMWs that are listed. Okay. We have a great grand prize for the winner that gets the most points. It's $500 from MBRP Exhaust. Great exhaust company. They have applications for many, many vehicles. One grand prize. So someone lucky, one of our competitors is gonna take home a $500 gift certificate towards a exhaust system or exhaust part from MBRP. So yeah, we're excited to see all the competitors compete in this. Our goal is to have this all done by the end of the weekend, and then we'll kick off registration. I believe if things go well, we'll be starting registration on the 30th, and registration will be open for all the events at once. And we'll just go look at the registration page. Now, when it comes to registration, right now, of course, nothing is listed, but there'll be a drop down. And with the drop down, your event will be listed if it's open for registration. So for now, we're just going to select this. Pretend we selected a city here. And you're going to enter in all the information relevant to your vehicle. You have to do one registration per vehicle per city. So if you want to enter 2 vehicles for Edmonton, you have to do a registration for each vehicle individually. And then if you want to register for Calgary as well, you have to do a separate registration for Calgary. Okay. Now the information here is all very important. I think Mike, your pet peeve. We're gonna jump right to Mike here, and I know what you're gonna say. Right? I think the key thing to recognize when you're registering your vehicle is, one, please don't register unless you're absolutely sure you can come out to the show. Don't register if your car is not completed, or if you feel like your vehicle will be completed by the event. Make sure the information is there so you can convince Mike and the judges that it will be complete. Because the last thing we want to do, because there are absolutely no refunds when it comes to registration, we spend quite a bit of effort, as you'll see, screening these vehicles. Once we screen them and sent you the information and approved your vehicle, there are no refunds. So please do not register unless you are certain you're going to be out at the event. Otherwise, you may be out your registration fee. But I think where I see the biggest problem, and it's time and time again, is that I think there's this, I don't know if it's entitlement, I don't know if it's just people are lazy, but we get a lot of registrations that don't come with any information at all, right? And I think that's where it's hard. You have to recognize that this is a screening process. This is what Mike here, who is just getting some photos and a list of information on the website. This is kind of like all that he gets to work from. So Mike, maybe help us out here. What are some major tips when it comes to registration that, things that you'd like to see people do better?
Yeah, I mean, I think you kind of hit the nail on the head there. The biggest things are information, mods, what's done to the vehicle, specifically stuff that we can't necessarily see in the pictures. Include, let's say, your planned modifications, but limit those to what you will have done by the show, right? I mean, don't put in you're gonna, do a Ferrari V12 swap, right? I mean, let's face it, that's not gonna happen, at least in the short term for most people. So keep it clear and concise. I don't need to know what type of oil or spark plugs you use. So let's keep it to the legit kind of modifications that are gonna, I guess, catch the eye of the judges. The other thing is photos. I mean, I've seen people submit with no photos at all. I've seen people submit with, a screenshot from their phone, or they were at the car wash when they decided to register, so I get a picture of their car at the car wash. There's other things where I get a close-up of somebody's headlight or somebody's wheel. That doesn't help me and the team to screen your vehicle. Let's think of it like you're creating a Auto Trader or Kijiji ad, right? Like, let's take some pictures around your vehicle. Let's take some pictures of the interior, under the hood. If you've got a good air system or a good sound system, let's get a picture of that. Maybe what's in your trunk. You're trying to sell this to us, right? So you want to put good information and good photos so that we don't have to, I guess, keep going back to you asking for clarifications or new photos, right?
Well, in fact, I don't think we do that, because we the volume of registrations we get, Mike, our protocol is just to basically reject it and ask them to reapply.
Ask them to reapply. Yeah. And when we do reject a vehicle, we will give reasons. So whether it's lack of photos or no mods list, that type of thing, you will get those comments in your rejection email. So if you want to reapply and kind of fix those areas from your registration, then you can. But you're right, we don't email competitors back and forth asking for more information.
Right. I think one of the things that obviously helps us is the Instagram. If they have an Instagram page, or they have much more photos that we can look at, that's also included, right?
Yep. And if you're going to include your Instagram, just make sure it's not private, because that does us no good, right?
Yeah. What's worse is when you include vehicle photos from Instagram and it's a private Instagram account. We just, with the volume of registrations we get, we don't have time to follow up, right? So if you make us request access and then we have to go back, by then we may have rejected your vehicle, right? Yep. So it's really important that you only submit photos to us that we can access. Same with if you are going to use we suggest right here in the instructions to use IMGBB, make sure you provide us the full URL. Sometimes we get URLs for their C drive, right? And I mean, that doesn't help us because we can't access your C drive. So yeah, just make sure you test all the links before you submit. Yep. No worries, Jeff. Great. So in terms of mods, I think you touched on that already, right? Obviously, we get some really interesting stuff. Mike, one day maybe we could publish when we're not doing this business and we don't want to get ourselves into trouble. We should publish some of the more interesting, mods lists that we've gotten, right? But yeah, we want a succinct list of the major mods. If they're pending, what do you suggest for those who have got vehicles that are pending completion?
Well, and that's kind of what I touched on. If you're going to register and you know in your mind that you're going to be done before the show, put down your pending modifications. List them as pending, right? But don't put stuff that you're not going to get done, because I mean, like you showed at the beginning, all this data, all this mods list that goes into the apps, right? So, if I'm judging this car at the show, and like I said, you've listed in your pending mods that you have a super rare engine swap that you're gonna do, and it's not there. Well, I mean, that detracts from the points, right? Because I mean, obviously, if you're coming with, let's say, a stock engine versus the engine swap, but yeah, let's keep the pending mods reasonable and attainable.
Great. What are some of the immediate red flags, like when it comes to vehicles? We've seen some vehicles with literally damage, right?
Yeah. We've rejected vehicles. The mods list may look impressive, but I mean, as soon as you look at the photos, there's damaged bumpers or paint peeling. We've actually seen submissions with rust on them, and I'm not talking about like rat rods. I'm talking about what's supposed to be a right, like a nice paint, nice finish car that's got rust on it. I mean, we can't have those at our show, right?
Yeah. Unfortunately, with some of the processes and the limited ability to screen these cars based on photos, some of that stuff does sneak in, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and it's unfortunate, but with the volume of vehicles we do, some of that stuff does sneak in. What's the criteria? Like the question I get a lot is my car good enough to be in the show, right? Mike, what's a general guideline when it comes to just vehicles that are typically making it into a show? And obviously, some events we have more space than others, right?
Yeah.
In an event like Winnipeg, we almost have infinite space because we rent out the whole Prairieland Park, right? Or sorry, Red River X. But then an event like, for example, Vancouver, we have very limited space, right? We can only accept about 300 vehicles, right? So,
yeah, I mean, if this is something that you're gonna see at a parking lot car meet, I call them, not grocery getters, but just more like daily drivers, right? So, I mean, at a minimum, we would expect some sort of suspension work, some sort of aftermarket wheels, exhaust, some body modifications or engine modifications, right? Like we want to highlight aftermarket performance parts, right? So, I mean, if your car is stock, chances are it's not going to get into the show. There have been some exceptions for, let's say, call it rare cars. We will just because it's like a niche car, right? It may be stock, but lots of people want to see it. Good example of that is a few years ago in Calgary. I think it was the year before the pandemic. We had the Nissan 400R, right? Right. So it's a stock car, but limited production run, right? So
yeah, no, very good points. We get some questions where like, how come this vehicle made it in and my vehicle didn't, right? One thing Mike doesn't get to screen always is what our exhibitors bring in, of course, right? And we get some questionable vehicles that our exhibitors do bring in, but I guess it's their business, right? And I get it sometimes. You may have a vehicle where it may be a completely stock car, but it's got some specific part that's an interior piece that you really want to show off, right? So there's some things that are non-screen. They're usually not cars that enter into our competition. But yeah, it isn't a very, I don't think it's a very complicated process. Most of it's very common sense, right?
Yeah, and I mean, in fairness to the competitors, I mean, we do look at, let's say, the majority of the vendors or exhibitor vehicles. But like you said, there may be some where, maybe it just has a nice set of wheels and this is a wheel company and they want to showcase that, right? But on the flip side, we have asked exhibitor vehicles to leave the show in the past because of standard of quality. So I
usually when we do that, Mike, it's we've done this long enough, right? Like we're really watching out after them, really, right?
Well, and then that's exactly it, right? I mean, we see something that thousands of people are going to see at the show, and it's not going to be a good representation of their business, right? And we work with them on that, and sometimes they'll bring in a different vehicle last minute, and that's fine too. But we want the best show possible, and that's kind of the gist of it.
Right? It's easy to fill a show with 100 cars, cool cars, but when we're at volumes of over 500, like our Toronto show, it's a little more difficult for us, right? Yeah. And I mean, sometimes just because it's and we'll talk about that. We'll talk about the competitors and some of the tips for our shows this year. Sometimes it's difficult once you're in. With the amount of vehicles we have, there is no getting out, right, from our shows. So, so registration will open. We love to see you guys register. Registering early does have its advantages. Don't be that guy that comes in right at the end. We get a lot of angry people at us, right, Mike, that submit their cars 2 weeks before the shows and they're on a standby list, right? So,
the shows fill up, and I mean let's say they sell out, and if you do wait until last minute, you're on a standby list and there's no guarantee that you're going to get in. I mean, you may have an amazing car, but if we have no space, we can't get you.
There's none. We've we get a lot of questions, and I think the specific case would be like somebody's working on their vehicle, their parts haven't arrived, right? So they don't want to register because we told them don't register until your car is ready, right? But then they're also worried that they're not going to get that spot because it's going to sell out, right? I think if we get anything that's really amazing, Mike, you've been pretty creative. We'll put them on a list or standby. We typically have, like last year, we have a lot. We often, like in Toronto, we had a lot of vehicles that didn't show up, right? And I think what happened was they all registered before they thought their cars would be ready. So we had about a big bank of space, like probably 20 plus people paid for those. Those are sold out spaces. And then we have these poor people who register because I think our standby list for Toronto was over 150 cars at least, right?
Yep.
Yeah, and we couldn't bring those vehicles in because people had taken up those spots. And not only did they not show up, they didn't tell us that they weren't going to show up. Weren't going to show up as well, right? So, so I guess on our end, if you're not going to show up, just let us know, right? We can still send you your tickets, right? Because with every registration, you get a set of tickets for yourself and a +1. So you can still come see the show. You've paid for those tickets, and it helps us because obviously we would love to give it to the next guy that's waiting in the queue, right? So, yeah. But when it comes to the events, gosh, what are some tips? Well, let's not talk about tips, Mike. Let's make this more interesting, right? What are the things that drive you nuts when it comes to, I guess, roll in, right? And some of the things that we see. Obviously, people are, there's anxiety, there's impatient people, there's all that, right? But how do you make your day? What are your tips, I guess, for people?
For roll-in, everybody will get a time or a time slot that they're supposed to roll in, whether they're exhibitors. We have some exhibitors that have no vehicles, right? Like Hobby Exclusive, right? But he will still get a roll-in time, right? So all competitors, all exhibitors get roll-in times. Come at your roll-in time.
I'll go a step beyond that and say, please read the email. Right?
Yeah, read the email.
Read the email,
right?
First.
There's
actually really good tips in the email, and there's actually some really great free stuff from like eBay Motors, right? So read it.
Yeah, we go through basically the whole floor plan and the whole roster of vehicles coming in, and we sequence everything coming in so that we can roll everyone in the most efficient way possible, right? So if you come outside of your time, and not even just late, people come early and expect to roll right in, because they're early. But you got to understand, if you roll in early, you may be blocking access to part of the show for us rolling in people that were supposed to come in that time slot. So there will be times where we ask you to wait until your roll-in time, or wait until we kind of maneuver vehicles so that we can get you situated. But yeah, so roll-in times is important. The other thing is checking in. Lots of people, they'll park, once they roll in, they'll park, and they'll see their friends and they'll start, chit-chatting, or they'll go and grab a coffee or start cleaning their cars. Well, then we get 300 people in a lineup to register their vehicle or check in their vehicle.
10 minutes before we're about to shut things down.
10 minutes before the show starts.
Yeah. And these are the guys that typically get angry at us because their car wasn't judged, right?
Well, yeah. So I know where you're going with that. You need to check your vehicle in so that we can get it into the judging app, so that we can judge it. If we do see a car without a number, we will still judge it. But then there's the added process of trying to track down the owner and that type of stuff. So once you get your car parked after roll-in, go and check in. If you do it kind of on that staggered roll-in entry, there's 30 people in line at most. Right. And we can get through that pretty quick. You'll be waiting in line for 5 minutes. If you wait until there's a lineup of 200 people, you're going to be there for an hour. Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
that's when we get some pretty unhappy people. Right. So, yeah.
And then other things, I guess, that everybody should know is we can't judge what we can't see. So you could have in your modification list that you've got $30,000 of work under the hood, but if you do not have your hood popped, we can't judge that area of your vehicle.
Yeah, and we can't reach in there and pop your hood, right? We would never do that.
No. We will not touch a competitor's car. If they are around, we will ask them if they would like their hood judged or their engine bay judged. And if they do, then they'll pop the hood. Some people don't, and that's fine too. But it's not just that, right? It's interior. If you've got limo tint on your windows and your windows are up and your doors are closed, I can't adequately see what you've done to your interior, right? So windows down at a minimum. Some competitors actually like to show with their doors open, which in some cases is based on where you're placed is acceptable. Trunk trunk is kind of hit and miss. Lots of people have air ride systems now, and sound systems that are in the trunk. So if you want us to judge those, make sure your trunk is open. Or again, you have to remain at your vehicle so that you can open it. You can open it for us, right?
Yeah, yeah. I think the number one question we get after the event is obviously some vehicles. People are asking, well, how did they lose when they think they should have won, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And sometimes it's as simple as we just couldn't judge anything, so you got zeros because your trunk was down, your hood was locked up, right?
Yeah.
And some guys do it intentionally because their hoods, there's nothing to see or it's dirty, right?
Yeah.
So we can't tell, is what you're saying, right?
Right. And in our internal judging app, we have a section for comments, and all the judges know to put those type of comments in there, right? Like, engine bay not judged because hood was closed, right? So that, when like you said, somebody comes up and wants to know why they didn't win, we have notes to refer back to, right? So
yep. So Mike, if I'm a competitor, right, and obviously I can't stay by my vehicle all day, to wait for the judges, right? What if my hood is kind of just popped? Will you then open the hood if you see that the hood's been popped?
No, we will not touch your vehicle,
Okay.
obviously without consent, right? We respect all the vehicles in the show.
Mm-hmm.
And we won't try door handles to see if the doors are open. We won't, like, I get what you're saying. If the hood is
Mm-hmm.
popped and we can see that it's just, popped and not fully latched,
Right.
we will not touch it to open it. I mean, that's
Okay.
just out of respect for the vehicles.
No, I understand that. So if I'm not there in that one, the moment the judges show up, obviously is going to be right when I go and grab my lunch, right? Murphy's Law. That's how it
Murphy's Law,
happens, right?
yeah.
What am I to do? How do I know that my car has been judged? We get a lot of people. Do they flag down a judge? What's the best option for them in that scenario?
Well, the best option is if you are going for lunch and you haven't seen a judge come by to judge your car yet, leave your hood open.
Okay.
Right. Right. So leave your hood open, leave your windows open, ask a friend to stand there for 20 minutes while you go and grab some food. Again, some people don't like to leave their vehicles, let's say, open, just during the show. And that's a security thing for them, right? Maybe some of them have things they don't want touched by spectators, right? Other people, they do it for, I'm going to say they do it for Instagram, right? They keep their car, everything closed so that it takes the best photos, right? But we need to see it to judge it. That's all I got to say.
Fair enough. Another question I get, and this is I see some of the responses our judges give to people, right? We get the vehicles that show up and they've got the 1-of-1 JDM kit, right? I've got the very first kit that's on this car, right? It's a 1-of-1. I deserve to win, right? They don't have. Obviously the response is like it's got to be a complete car and it's got to be the fit and finish has to be done right, as well, right,
Of
Mike?
course. Yes, of
Yeah.
course.
Yeah. So I think you know, when we're looking for what are the key things judges are looking for when it comes to where do you see people losing the most points when it comes to judging, other
Uh,
than not being able to see it, right?
yeah, it's the obvious big second in line to not being able to see it is cleanliness, right? We look at, like did you clean your windows, right? Your windshield. Um, did you clean your wheels? Did you clean your tires, right? Like we see a
And this
lot
is
of
an event
cars.
dust, right? Because we've had some dusty environments.
Yes,
Our parkades aren't the cleanest, right? Parking events,
yes.
but you can tell when a vehicle hasn't, it's got caked on dirt, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Yeah. We
Yeah.
we know the difference between, let's call it, event dust, right? Like even when we're in the Olympic Oval, the cars get dusty. And when it hits 4 o'clock and the sun shines in that window, you can see the dust in the air, right? So we know what has been cleaned prior and what is was just kind of some accumulation during the day.
Yeah.
Um,
This is a completely controllable element that you'll be lose points over, right?
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. And what about I guess another one I've seen is like people saying that, hey, my car is a performance car. I don't have, any 12-volt work to it, right?
Yeah.
We get that a lot. And obviously there's some shows out there that will judge completely based on how cool a car is versus what I like to think that you're more along the lines of the fundamentals, right, Mike, when it comes
Yeah.
to judging, versus what's cool, right, to the judges. We see people lose a ton of points because their car might, again, using the example of, I got this crazy JDM car with this one of one wheels, one of one body kit, and it's losing to this vehicle that's got not, they don't have $8,000 wheels, but it's got a really done custom stereo to it, right? We've seen
Mhm.
people lose to those vehicles. Hey, sorry guys, my battery died. So my performance vehicles versus kind of like your cool cars, or versus your car audio guys, right? Like,
Well,
that's a tough
and
one, right?
it is a tough one, and the response to that is we have different award categories, right? Like we have a strictly ICE award, which is your in-car electronics, right? Um, so you know maybe ICE is all you have done to your car. you know Nowadays, I'm going to say sound old doing that, but nowadays most people have more than just that. But I mean, if that's your focus and that's the award that you're chasing, then that's fine, right? And you'll fall into that category. Same with engine performance, right? Like if you've got a 1500 horsepower Supra or GTR, bring dyno sheets because we need proof, right?
Yeah.
Um, you know, and let me finish the thought. So if you have that aspect, then that is your build. Maybe you're building a high horsepower streetable track car type of thing. Um, Bring your dyno sheets, pop your hood, and talk to us, tell us about your modifications. And because a lot of time on those high horsepower builds, lots of it's internals, right? We can't see inside your engine, so we need to kind of know what's going on behind the scenes, right? um, but again, you can chase the award for that, right? Last year we didn't really have any, if many at all, that fell into that category, so we didn't have an award for that, right?
Yeah.
We did have some cars that came out and had, they claimed 700 plus horsepower,
Mhm.
um, but nothing to back it up, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
we can't give you an award based on what you say you have, right?
Right. And I think that's the last item I want to touch on is just the award categories, right? We get a lot of people who show up and say, "Hey, why wasn't there a Prius award, best Prius award or something like that," right? I think it goes down to the fact that, like, we don't set our categories before the shows, right,
That's
Mike?
right. Yeah.
And we do that because we want to make sure that everybody has a fair chance, right?
That's right. Our award categories are fluid for every show. Because I mean, if we just did one show in, let's say, a Calgary or an Edmonton, we could probably come up with an awards list that is, static every year.
Yep.
Because it's the same content. But you got to remember, we do shows from Vancouver to Halifax, right? Everywhere in between. And the content is so different city to city, right? Like you look at Winnipeg, lots and lots of Subarus, right? Vancouver, lots of, let's call it high-end, high money vehicles, right? So the content is so different in each city that it would really be unfair to the competitors to say, this is the static list, right? Because, in Halifax, well, if they don't have, any good Toyotas or many Toyotas, let's say, what are we just not going to give out the Toyota awards because there's no cars there, or it maybe goes to a car that scores low but's the only one there. So what we would do is like you said, we kind of tailor our awards list once we know what's going to be at the show, so that everybody has a better chance of getting an award.
That's perfect. Gosh, I think this was a call that we really owed the competitors, right? I'm hoping all our competitors take this information, and I mean, obviously, for us, it's always a continuous process of getting better at doing this.
Yeah.
We welcome feedback. Mike has been always very approachable with competitors. I don't think we've ever just said someone no, that's we don't have an answer for you. We make mistakes like everybody else, right, Mike? Right?
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, you help us by giving us feedback. So we're looking forward to hearing from all the competitors how we can get better. Information is always available on how to contact us. But yeah, it's going to be exciting. We've got Driven Virtual. We hope you all, that's a kickstart to get you guys ready. And then as soon as Driven Virtual is done, there'll be a winner of Driven Virtual of a really nice prize from MBRP. Mm-hmm. We have some really fantastic bonuses for people who register for Driven this year from eBay Motors. And when you get to the registration page, you'll start to see some of that really good stuff that eBay Motors is going to be doing with us. Really generous with some of the stuff they're giving away to all our competitors. So, Mike, thank you for joining us and giving us some information about the events that honestly I didn't even know, right? So it's exciting. I'm really excited, and we're doing our best here to make it a very competitive and fair environment, unbiased and fair environment for all our competitors. So we look forward to hosting you for Driven 2023.